My name is Terry Mamounas. I'm the medical director of the Comprehensive Breast Program at Orlando Health Cancer Institute, and I'm a breast surgical oncologist by training. So the question is, why should a patient consider an experimental clinical trial? And of course, it is important, very important for patients to consider participation in clinical trials, because clinical trials really are the primary way for researchers to find out new treatments, like new drugs or new procedures, whether those are safe and effective in patients. And often a clinical trial is used to learn if a new treatment is even more effective and has less harmful effects than the standard treatment. More importantly, by participating in a clinical trial, patients can help expand our medical knowledge, which essentially always comes from patients, right? We only know what we do because patients either participate in clinical trials or we actually identify their outcomes. So the best information in terms of how patients will do with the disease comes from high quality clinical trials. So as a result of many clinical trials, for example, in breast cancer, evaluating novel treatments, novel approaches to the disease, deaths from breast cancer continue to decrease steadily over the past 30 years. And more importantly, the progress is now accelerating with an increasing number of drugs for breast cancer and obviously for other cancers as well, becoming available each and every year. So the number of approved drugs every year continues to increase. But participation in a clinical trial also can benefit the individual patient as well. Like if he or she is given the new experimental therapy that proves at the conclusion of the trial to improve outcomes or let's say decrease side effects, the patient could benefit personally. Of course, if the new treatment is not better, then obviously the patient would not receive any benefit and may be subjected to either new or different side effects. But obviously, if a patient is assigned to the control arm of the trial, then she will receive standard treatment. So obviously, whether the drug worked or not, it will not make a difference for that particular patient. However, even if the patient on a clinical trial receives the standard arm of the treatment and not the experimental treatment, the care of the patients who participate in clinical trials is more likely to be of higher quality, given the rigorous monitoring that is required by the research personnel, which can help improve patient compliance with the treatment and also elevate the overall standard of care for a patient, which can then turn into improved outcomes. So I say that to patients all the time that participation in clinical trial in and of itself, even if you get the standard treatment, it will result in a higher quality care because a lot of people are looking at you and coordinating with each other. So everything is really done very appropriately. Some patients participate in clinical trials because there are no standard treatments available to them, particularly with advanced, let's say, breast cancer. Then they need new drugs because the drugs that already have tried possibly did not work. And of course, participating in clinical trial obviously leads to the approval of the new and effective or effective less toxic drugs, resulting in improved outcomes and quality of life, not only for the patients that participate in the clinical trial, but for thousands and hundreds of thousands of patients that benefit from the results of the trial. And this obviously has happened a lot in breast cancer over the last 30 to 40 years. Now, whether patients can access clinical trials everywhere, I think is a good question, because although not all clinical trials are available in every facility, most hospitals and cancer centers have access to a menu of clinical trials for their oncology patients. So most cancer centers, oncology offices, academic facilities, tertiary care centers are able to offer clinical trial participation to their patients, or at least refer them to a nearby facility that offers the clinical trial that the patient may be interested in participating. So many of these clinical trials are funded by the National Cancer Institute, and they're administered through the national cooperative groups, which, as you know, is organizations that develop and implement clinical trials and then distribute it to their members for patients to participate in different facilities. And these often are national trials. And sometimes clinical trials can also be developed by the pharmaceutical companies or device makers. And in a similar way, they become available for accrual in many clinical sites, both in the US and sometimes globally. These trials are obviously commonly approved by the Food and Drug Administration, and they're closely monitored by the study sponsor. Some of the major cancer centers also offer clinical trials that are designed by their own physicians and investigators in that particular cancer center. This is what we call investigator-initiated trials. So some cancer centers may have some particular trials that you may not find in other centers. Just for patients to know where they can find some of these clinical trials, they can go to clinicaltrials.gov, which is a government website that can be accessed by anybody. And the website provides important information regarding the study design, the objectives, the eligibility of different trials, as well as information on accrual, how much more patients are needed for the trial, and also, more importantly, where this trial is available. So a patient may find a place near them where the trial is available and then go and enroll in that particular trial. So clinical trials, very important. That's sort of my passion. And I think I encourage all patients that they see if there's a clinical trial that can participate, to be able to participate, because they help themselves often, but also other patients with the same disease.